A light mist hung over the water surface of the river. Night birds chirped and cicadas chirped in the darkness. Twilight is the ideal time for fishing. Few people go fishing at this time, and John took advantage of it. At such a time, you can really relax and enjoy the atmosphere of nature. And most importantly, a great catch. Before launching the boat, John looked at the surface of the water. Fry were playing on the bottom, timidly swimming toward the shore. Once they touched the clear surface, they scattered in different directions. John jumped into the boat and swam deep into the river. A light breeze blew against his back, sending hundreds of goosebumps down his spine. The boy shuddered, wrapping himself more tightly in his warm jacket. Once he was far enough from the shore, John took up his fishing rod. The first cast didn't take long, and after a couple minutes the fish grabbed the live bait. A good old worm with a special additive always helps. The second throw, this time, had to wait a little longer. The fishing was in full swing. Half a bucket was already full, another bucket was ready. John plunged into excitement, forgot about time, and not only about it. He was so engrossed in fishing that he thought only of the fish and the river, which had no end and no edge. He didn't even notice when a strange-looking fish swam up to his boat. It was rather large, rounded, with angular sides and a head, resembling a human head. When John looked overboard to wash his hands, the strange fish was gone. He spotted it and looked into the water, but the fish was gone. I must have imagined it, he thought, and took up the rod again. And as soon as he cast the rod, suddenly a terrible fish jumped out of the water and clung to John's hand. The guy screamed, grabbed the creature by the tail and began to pull, but it did not move. Its teeth were so deeply embedded in the flesh that it was impossible to tear them off. He had to use his fists. With a few blows, he knocked the fish out of his hands, slammed it against the side of the boat, and it fell into the water. Blood gushed from his hand, dripping to the surface of the water and attracting more fish. John clutched the wound tightly. He couldn't stop the blood that way, of course. He had to sacrifice the sleeve of his jacket to keep the blood off him. There was only one thing to do: get out of here. No sooner had he swum a couple of meters than he was attacked again. This time 3 fish were gnawing into his flesh. All 3 monsters targeted his forearms, forcing him to let go of the oars from his hands. His body was convulsing, the pain intensifying. John, unable to fight off the river creatures, began to thrash against the side of the boat. The creatures, though not immediately, broke free, taking pieces of flesh with them. John fell to the bottom of the boat and screamed loudly, but no one heard him. More creatures appeared, a whole pack, several dozen of these creatures, gathered behind their prey. They jumped out of the water, flying over the boat. The guy only had to defend himself by slightly raising his bleeding arms. When one of these fish swam to the side, John quickly grabbed an oar, pulled himself up and smashed its head with a few strokes. Barely able to get to his feet, he swung the paddle around, fighting off more and more monsters. From a few dozen to 100, it was impossible to fight off such a crowd. The oar broke from the struggle. Soon it subsided, and John grabbed a second oar. The water monsters stopped terrorizing the boy. John stood for a minute until the tension in his body subsided. While there was time, we should swim away. It was hard to swim on one oar, and impossible. His arms ached terribly. It was still a long way to shore. He hoped someone would hear him, but there was nothing around. John became desperate, clutched his head and cried. He would have to sit in the middle of the river until morning, hoping someone would find him during the day. Suddenly, the water in front of the bow of the boat rumbled. John turned his attention to it. Every time there were more bubbles in the water, there was a small wave in that spot that got bigger and bigger, heading towards the boat. This wave was quite unusual. These creatures were approaching their prey along the wall of water, bringing up a torrent of water. John covered himself with his arms, even though he knew it wouldn't help him. The wave of river monsters swept over him, swallowing him and the boat. The next day, 2 fishermen found the guy's corpse floating on the surface of the water. They noticed his bare, scarlet back with his spine protruding. The fishermen dropped their fishing rods and ran to call for help. Meanwhile, several creepy creatures swam up to the shore,